It's a giant problem that exists almost exclusively on one side.
Yeah, with all due respect, Bill, I will tell you, speaking as somebody who's right of center, was very clear about the fact that Trump lost the election.
All right, so Vivek Ramaswamy went on Real Time with Bill Maher, and things got really heated. Vivek didn't hold back, and what you're about to see is him absolutely wipe the floor with Bill, but stay till the end. I have a challenge for Vivek now. Here's the deal. We know how these systems are supposed to work, right? But it's clear they don't have any real integrity. They want you to just bow down, accept who's sitting on the throne and go along with it. Well, listen, yeah, maybe that's who's sitting there, but that doesn't mean I'm bending the knee or respecting it. Let's get into it.
Okay, John, the title of your book is The Big Lie, a line that Trump parroted and Republicans have perpetuated. How does our nation overcome this? Is it even possible?
Well, certainly it is very much still with us. The big lie didn't begin or end on January 6th. Donald Trump planted the seeds years before. He spent years hijacking the Republican Party, the conservative media, with lie after lie, getting them to believe the big one, which is about his false claims election fraud. But we're still seeing it now. We've seen states use it. As Republican-controlled state legislatures use it to restrict access to the ballot in more than a dozen states. We have seen candidates right now for the midterms not just saying that they want to still overturn the 2020 election, nearly 2 years out, but won't commit to conceding if they were to be defeated this fall. It is a litmus test for the Republican Party, and we're also seeing the negative impact in the polls. More and more Democrats also feel they can't necessarily trust election results. It is going to be one of the defining issues for our democracy this cycle through 2024 and beyond, being able to restore the American people's faith in the government, that not just they have the ability to vote, but their vote will be counted correctly.
You hear that? Jonathan Lemire, the MSNBC guy, is over here talking about restoring faith. But what does he really mean by that, restoring faith? Now, what he really means is crushing his political enemies into the dust. And that's how faith gets restored. He's not talking about accuracy or fairness. No, no, no. This is about stomping out anyone who disagrees with him. It's not about integrity. It's about control. And yeah, I agree with him on one thing, though. There's no reason to trust this system. Why would anyone trust a system that's been falling apart for years? Let's get real here.
And that the actual winner is installed into power. And it is going to take education, and it is going to take people from both parties speaking out against it. And we're seeing very little of that, certainly from the Republican side right now.
So look, I had a chapter in my book dedicated to this. I don't disagree with the premises of your book. I will tell you that it must seem that Stacey Abrams is a bit of a Republican. She's somebody who's running for executive office, top office in Georgia, for the governor's mansion, who has not yet conceded the last race, who claimed that that race was stolen from her by Brian Kemp, allegedly one of the same people who stole the race from Donald Trump.
Yeah, I've heard this on the show before. I got to just call bullshit on this. It's just it's just such silly whataboutism. Yes, you pick out the one example on the left, one example among Democrats that is not nearly as consequential as what is going on in the entire Republican Party, including the leader of the party, Donald Trump. And that's the answer, Stacey Abrams. It's a bullshit answer, man. It's a bullshit answer.
With all due respect,
it's a bullshit answer to a giant. It's a giant problem that exists almost exclusively on one side.
Yeah, with all due respect, Bill, I will tell you, speaking as somebody who's right of center, was very clear about the fact that Trump lost the election.
If you're enjoying this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps, and you won't want to miss what's next.
And I was disappointed that he did not accept that result. But it does irritate me a little bit when people on the left unidirectionally point the finger at Trump without looking at, take the Iowa election last time, all right? Nancy Pelosi refused to seat somebody, or almost refused to seat somebody who was elected out of the state of Iowa. Even if you take a lot of the narratives now, as you said, impacting the left into willingness to accept election results, I think it's really important that everyone who at least points to someone in their tribe, or on the other side, points to someone in their own tribe, or else we're not going to have faith in either side of the electoral system.
But more so where the two things are more of equal merit. I mean, this is a mouse and an elephant, you know? It's a cheap trick.
I'd be curious for your view on this, which is, take the 2016 election, all right? What role did this play where a lot of Democrats were not willing to accept the legitimacy of the 2016 election outcome on the back of the Russia collusion narrative? What role does that play in giving legitimacy to the other side to now say they're not going to accept the election. So I think this has been a game of escalation going along for a long time. I don't think it's a one-sided issue.
The election. Hillary came down in her purple suit.
Yeah.
Before she went to bed.
Before committing to start the impeachment hearings on the other side, on the back of a Russia collusion narrative that
the impeachment was not about Russia collusion. The impeachment was about Ukraine. The impeachment was about the Ukraine scandal.
Right. There were certainly Democrats who were unhappy. There were Democrats who certainly were. We saw the protest, the Women's March, the day after Trump's inauguration. But Hillary Clinton conceded the election the next morning.
Yes.
There were even one or two lawmakers who, on the January 6th of 2017, said like, oh, Trump. There were like two lawmakers who suggested that Trump shouldn't be seated. They might protest. And you know who shot them down? Vice President Joe Biden, who was overseeing the Senate at that time, said, no, we're moving on. Donald Trump is elected
And you know
president.
who shot down the other side is Mike Pence, who said, I'm certifying the results of this election. So I just think that
there were thousands of people outside trying to break into the Capitol at that.
Right, and no one is.
I don't get all this whataboutism talk from Bill Maher. It's not even about that. It's about consistency. Like, if you can't admit what Stacey Abrams did, refusing to accept the result, then what's the point of even having a conversation? You're not coming into this genuinely. If you can't acknowledge it, it's clear. You're just dodging reality to suit your own narrative. Maher dismisses it, calling it a mouse versus an elephant. What does that even mean? He's completely missing the point here. Vivek Ramaswamy isn't pulling some whataboutism. He's calling out the fact that both sides have pulled the same trick. But of course, Maher won't acknowledge it because it doesn't fit his narrative. If you're going to be honest in these conversations, you can't ignore facts just because they come from your own side. Vivek absolutely exposed Maher here.
No one is saying that there aren't millions and millions of good Republicans who are not Trumpers. Or maybe they like Trump, but they still don't think he won the election. And they said so. And yes, not just Mike Pence, Mitch McConnell, Bill Maher, Liz Cheney, none of these were on my favorites list. But they did the right thing. They are what I call as good as it gets Republicans. No, I'm talking to liberals now. Yeah. Because before the impeachment trial, if you went down the list of what Liz Cheney is for, I mean, she would be booed roundly, and now liberals cheer her. Because that is as good as it gets. And that's what I think everybody in this country has to understand. You're never going to get people who see the world the way you do. And they don't have to. But when push came to shove, there are Republicans who did the right thing. The argument you are making is a false equivalency.
So I'm not making equivalence, Bill.
This is not a problem on a giant problem on both sides. It is a giant problem on one side.
I view it through a beyond partisan lens. Okay, at the end of the day.
Well, you shouldn't, because it's a partisan issue.
Well, I disagree with that. I respectfully disagree. I think that the threats to democracy, are plural. For me, I'll tell you where I'm coming from here. Where I'm coming from is the best measure of the health of a democracy to me, you know what it is? It is the percentage of people who feel free to say what they actually think in public. It's not the votes that are cast. That's just fetishizing the act at the end of the process. And when I look at the true threats to democracy, to free speech, to open discourse, I do not think it is a one-sided threat from the Republican Party. To the contrary, I think the threats to democracy are plural, and we have to acknowledge that, or else we're going nowhere.
Well,
but the votes that cast do matter, because those are putting people in office who are making public policy and passing laws and nominating justices to the Supreme Court. So, I mean, I think that's more of an impact also on personal liberties than just the ability to speak out.
Yes, and to your point about are there existential threats, which both sides use, and by the way, both sides use the phrase big lie. The big lie means a completely different thing in a Trump bar.
Yes.
Yeah.
They think it's the hoax.
Yeah, absolutely. But, okay, I will agree. You know, I'm all the time getting castigated by people on the left because I criticize them for what I think are their excesses and their insanity.
And I respect that.
Let's show the picture of the lady with the big tits again.
Must we?
No, we mustn't. But the Jugs magazine one, I will.
Yeah.
Okay, but on this particular issue, it is something that only one side really owns. Let me ask you this. The 147, Michael Moore was talking about, the 147 members of Congress who would not certify the election. Do you think if it was the other way around, there would have been 147 Democrats who wouldn't certify the election?
I don't
Do you think the Democrats would have attacked the Capitol the way the Trump people did on January?
So here's the thing. People say the right is uniquely problematic because back in 2016, We had someone rally a movement that we hadn't seen in years. He wasn't part of the corporate duopoly, and that's why they've been working ever since to make sure something like that never happens again. But let's be real. The person from 2016 is not the same person we're looking at now. They're not worried about what's coming in 2024 because that version of him or the movement isn't what it used to be. Now, let's not kid ourselves. The left and the right aren't all that different when it comes to fear. Both sides cling to what's comfortable. On the right, people look at the guy running now and think he's the answer instead of a philosophy or a broader movement. That's no different from the corporate left, where everyone just falls in line. This isn't just about one side. It's about how people run to these figures instead of ideas. And that's probably 90% of the folks paying attention. The rest are just apathetic. Now, here's where I'm going to challenge both Vivek and Jonathan Lemire. I think Vivek gets what I'm saying. When he ran, he didn't even mention the big name on the right, but he still pushed that figure to the popular side. Now he's on board with the team, but what we need are leaders, people like Vivek to step up and lead, not follow some 74-year-old guy. Come on, man, let's see some real leadership here.